Experimentation is such a diverse field, it's such a nuanced topic. We need to challenge assumptions and biases. So, coming from diverse backgrounds is very rich. In fact, it's very uncommon for people to study experimentation properly. So, that is also very natural for people to come from all walks of life. We are told in life to pick one career, pick one path with the expectation of following that experience linearly. But once we're in the field working, it might turn out that that experience is actually quite messy. Such was my case. There were twists and turns and roundabouts as to how I landed upon experimentation. And today I want to propose to you an unexpected path, or a path you may not have thought about: product analytics as a pathway to experimentation. Hey, I'm Miguel. I'm a product analytics manager at Bloomberg Industry Group. I have been in data and analytics for over 7 years, helping small and large companies make better decisions. And for the last couple of years, I have been focused on product analytics properly. Before Bloomberg, I was working at a startup focused on making the world of streaming services simpler. So, what are we going to talk about today? Our agenda includes four main items. First of all, we are going to double down on this idea of nonlinearity and talking about career paths, sharing a little bit about my journey to spur inspiration for yours. We're then going to talk about the lay of the land, what product analytics actually is, and how it overlaps or is different than other fields. Then we will talk about navigating the waters. This will be based on my own experience actually going through several job interview processes for product analytics roles, to also share and hopefully guide your own process. And last but not least, we will take a step back and talk about job search tips and tricks, broadly speaking, to help you chart your own course. So, without further ado, let's begin. And again, double down on this concept of careers being nonlinear. And I will frame it as in terms of diversity. This is not only rich, but it's a requirement, especially as we are talking about experimentation. Uh, Experimentation is such a diverse field, it's such a nuanced topic. We need to challenge assumptions and biases. So, coming from diverse backgrounds is very rich. In fact, it's very uncommon for people to study experimentation properly. So, that is also very natural for people to come from all walks of life. So, I also want to share a little bit about me to maybe again spur inspiration for your own journey and see how one can actually break into these fields. So, I started my career in psychology. Understanding why we do what we do is a question that has always haunted me. And from the very early days in my day studying psychology, I was very interested or focused on the research slash quantitative driven classes, which led me partly to landing my first role in market research. I was a data analyst using network analysis to scrape social media websites and understand the interactions and cluster people based on common behaviors. So this was from a digital anthropology, sociology lens, but most importantly, introduced me to the idea that you can use technology to get data at scale and analyze it at scale, but always interpret it from a particular behavioral lens, which also led to my next role as a computational social scientist or a data scientist at a tech company. I worked at a supply chain technology company where the goal was to analyze businesses and how they do risk and how they do business with others, so you can understand your customers and if your supply chain is going to be secure. And this further introduced an idea of using technology, but interpreted from a social science lens. But it also introduced me to the idea of using technology and building productionized models, much more of an engineering environment, which ultimately led to my master's degree or my graduate studies, where I pursued a degree in data analytics and computational social science, further introducing this idea that you can do all of the fun and interesting data stuff, but you can still interpret it, and it's very valuable from a social science lens. So the program was all about using technology in your favor, but analyzing social science data sets and understanding stuff such as economics, mental health, and so on, which ultimately led to my current roles in product analytics. So,
My name is Romo Santiago, founder of Experimentation. Our new book, Prove It or Lose It, The mostly no-nonsense guide to surviving experimentation program drama is out now. Find it at experimentation.com and all major bookstores today.
All of this is basically a big jumble of madness. You may as well plop it into a blender, and out comes out something very fuzzy. But again, that is how I actually got into product analytics. But within this mayhem, how do you make sense of it? How do I make sense of it? Well, it always helped to have my North Star. In my case, as I said, it was really about understanding people, why we do what we do, and then in this understanding, being able to help. I try to think about it as we are building product for the people and for businesses to make better decisions, to be sure of what we're doing. And that is my North Star. My question for you: what is your North Star? Do you have one in mind? Keep that in the back of your head. If you already have it very present, that can help. If not, continue to think about it. But again, that is something that within this chaos has brought light to me and uh, provided the guidance I could use in my career. But then, actually going into the topic that we are here to talk about, product analytics as a pathway to experimentation. So, what product analytics is, I can broadly summarize it as understanding what people do on digital products, such as websites or mobile apps. So, that is a big statement and very vague. Let's break it down. Starting with the understand section. That's where the technology and the analytics portion comes in. So, we're talking about using technology first and foremost to track data. We are at the end of the day tracking what people are doing on digital products. So we use the tracking and infrastructure we have set up, and then we take that data and measure it in several ways. We can use descriptive statistics such as slicing and dicing the data and understanding what devices they are on. But then we can also do more advanced stuff such as machine learning. But understanding, again, is the infrastructure that enables all this, and then the analytics portion, slicing and dicing the information so it makes sense. What people is at the center of it. That is, we will usually call it users, people engaging with the products, and they are at the center of it, not only because we are building products to serve them, but also because we need behavioral science theories. We need a theory of the universe or of the social universe of how people behave within your products. Personally, I like to think not only in terms of building behavior loops, for example, or habits, so that your product is sticky and people are coming back, but also in terms of collectiveness and user personas, for example. Although I personally don't love the term user personas, but you get the idea. You talk about groups of people and what they have in common and why they would actually want to use your product, and talking about those shared pains. And last but not least, and also very important, products. We are all about understanding the behavior in a digital product. So you need to have a website, a mobile app, a brand that encompasses all of this. And again, you will then set up the infrastructure to track things. You will then understand your people. But at the end of the day, you are a product and you are here to drive a business forward, and you do it through a digital product. So again, understanding what people do on digital products is product analytics in a nutshell. But still, that kind of sounds familiar or resembles a lot of other paths. That's okay. In fact, product analytics does work closely with several areas or lines of work. For example, product management. In my day to day, I work closely with product managers. And even though we are not building the products per se, we bring the information to help them make better decisions. And we do bring a component of business savviness and understanding user behavior, and also even marketing principles, which are very much at the core of product management. But we don't actually build the products. Again, we focus on the information to make the decisions. But it can also overlap with user research, for example. Uh, Unlike user research, which is more qualitative, more focused on user interviews, for example, uh, product analytics will be much more quantitative, and but we do have the common denominator of being user centric. We are talking about users and trying to understand them. And on the next level, we will have data science, for example. At the end of the day, data science and product analytics both are dealing with information and how do we use it to the best of our knowledge. Unlike data science, which maybe much more sophisticated, much more creating productionized models, such as a recommendation engine. Product analytics might be less focused on that. You may still deliver advanced analytics, but more so in the interest of understanding people and your users. But how about experimentation? What does experimentation have to do in this whole mess, or how does it relate to product analytics? Well, I like to think of it in terms of a pyramid. So imagine at the basis of product analytics, you will have understanding the business is at the core of it. You need to understand your ecosystem, your competitive environment, and how your product fits within the whole industry. Then you build a product that, or you help build a product that serves to these needs and fits within the market. And you need an infrastructure to set up everything, right? To track what people are doing within digital products. Then at the next level, once you have the basis, once you understand your business, you understand your people, and you have an infrastructure to track information, you will start slicing and dicing the information, analyzing it, creating models, and writing it. That's where elements such as storytelling comes in, for example. That is extremely important in data analytics. Then, at the top of the pyramid, I like to think sits experimentation. It is the epitome and brings it all together. You need all of the previous elements to do it. And in your day to day, it is in reality one of the many tools you will employ as a product analyst. Some roles, depending on the company and the team, will have you focus more on A/B testing or experimentation than others, but still, it is very much present. So, at this point, we have talked about career journeys and the idea of nonlinearity and North Star being a core idea that can help you navigate and get into the field. Then we talked about product analytics properly, what it is, and how it relates to experimentation. Now, let's talk about my recent experience actually going through the interview process. I found myself going through about 10 interview processes with some of the household technology names, and there are some of the common themes and that I still see in my day to day, and I want to share these much more from a job seeking perspective, again, to ultimately help you break into the field if you do consider to do that. So the process was cold applications in my case, and mostly around U.S. United States roles. So it may be applicable to North America and European roles, but possibly to other parts of the world as well. But I did want to say that because in the spirit of understanding behavior, context is everything. So I do want to caveat that. So with that out of the way, and again, talking about these 10-ish roles I went through with varying levels of seniority, let's dive into it. First of all, the interview structure. What to expect when you go into a product analytics job process interview. You will have usually you apply, you hit submit, you go through whatever job portal you have. You will have a hiring manager call. Uh, you will have the recruiter call. Usually, you will have a technical assessment, which can be live or take home. And if it's a senior role, you will probably have a case study and a panel interview. And here I added a graphic that Amni Munir, who is a product analyst at Meta, he created it talking about the job interview process. And this very much resembled my experience. Again, I applied for a few levels of seniority, and the more senior levels will focus more on the case study and behavioral questions. Influence and executive communication does become more important the more senior you're talking about. And when it's a little bit less senior or entry level, you will talk about more the technical part. So the next element we can discuss is what technical skills or tools you are required. The core, I called it, or the must-haves are really SQL is at the core of it. Any job, any product analytics role did require SQL. And then Python and R, there was some debate. Python, it was more so a nice to have. And R is much more academic, but some job descriptions did still mention it. But again, SQL is really, really the must-have, and then Python is borderline must-have. Then, in terms of product analytics proper, or the rest of the tech stack really is dependent on the company, and so it will vary. But if you know at least one of these tools within each category, you will be able to easily learn the others. So, for example, within product analytics proper, I located mixed panel, and amplitude, which are some of the industry leaders, but you also have full story, which you can. This is a software that actually enables the analytics to understand user behavior. You can create funnels, for example, understanding will people start in their journey and how they end, stuff like that. Then you also have some roles that require knowledge in terms of tracking and connecting data sources. So this is where segment and rudder stack comes in. So it's much more of an engineering focused. Again, not all roles require it, but some did. Then on the next level, you have more so the data analytics slash science slash engineering stack. So visualization, you will have some of the leaders such as Tableau, Looker, and then some of the more niche players such as Metabase or Omni. Then on the warehousing front, which kind of um, tells you what type of SQL you will be using, what flavor of SQL, you will have players such as Snowflake or BigQuery. And last but not least, some roles did require some data modeling or analytics engineering expertise, um, most notably DBT, which is both a software and a philosophy in terms of how to deal with data and make it usable across the organization. So again, just for you to be aware, that is one of the requirements that a few companies did have. Then something that was extremely common across all of the jobs was product sense and business acumen. If I had to describe it, I would use that meme that is know your product is knowing your product is the beginning of all wisdom. So truthfully, they expect product analysts to be thought partners uh, and work with the business closely to understand what they are expecting, what they need, and translate the numbers into meaningful insights and actions and recommendations. So it's really not only about crunching numbers; it is about understanding your product, being proactive, understanding your industry, and how information can uh, position your product strategically within the ecosystem. And how do you do this? Metrics. Metrics are at the core of it. I haven't really mentioned it that much, but product metrics, from when you understand behavior, you translate that into metrics. That's where pirate metrics such as the acquisition, activation, retention funnel uh, come in handy. And you talk about average revenue per user, for example. Those metrics translate and communicate well with the business. Then, something very common, and this is very fitting for this presentation, well, experimentation was very much an important element for most of the companies. Again, some will have you focus heavily on it, while others not so much, but still very much present. And also machine learning. The more senior the role, the more expectation there is to know some advanced analytics and do feature importance level analysis or clustering analysis. So also something just to keep in mind that you may need to upskill in that area. And also cross-functional and executive communication. As I mentioned earlier, the more senior the role, the more the expectation to actually influence and communicate with the business. But even for entry-level roles or senior-level roles, you are expected to work across teams and translate business requirements into actionable steps for your analytics team. Uh, but especially, it's about communicating clearly. Since you will be working with teams that don't necessarily know the nuances of your work, nor should they, then you must translate that work. And a lot of the times, again, the more senior the role, the more you will be presenting to executives. So the more the need to be explaining these in layman terms. And last but not least, in terms of navigating the job search process, something I asked all of my interviewers was, how do you define success as a product analyst? And too long don't read, there was no single response, but there were some common threads. For example, one of the hiring managers mentioned you are expected to be curious, autonomous, and adaptable. Then others also mentioned the idea of thought partners. You want to work closer with your business associates and your business partners. You need to be technically savvy, but also communicate clearly to executives. So again, that balance of being technical but yet communicating, and balancing strategic versus ad hoc strategies versus ad hoc work, aligning stakeholders around shared definitions are some of the common threads. But again, really product analytics can mean many things depending on the organization. So it really is up to you to flesh that definition out and refine it as we go. So at this point, we have talked about career paths, we have talked about what product analytics is, I have shared some of the insights from my own job search process. Now we will take a step back to talk very briefly about some general job search tips that I have learned throughout my years in cold application processes, and again, mostly in U.S., United States slash North America roles, um, and cold applications. But if that is the type of route you want to pursue, I have found several tips and tricks that may help your own journey. So, starting with job searching is a pain. It is tedious, and it can take a lot on your emotionality. So let's try to make it as easy as possible. How have I found this? Uh, One trick I have found is to stick with one platform. I have tried with several of the main names. I picked the one I like the most, and I set job alerts for that one. I had set a handful of job alerts, uh, and I check them usually every day. And I have had better luck applying to jobs that were recently posted, usually less than a week between when they were posted. And if they have less than 100 applicants, even better. That significantly has increased my chances of getting callbacks. And if possible, I have focused on quality over quantity. Having a few high quality, highly tailored applications did way better for me than spam applying to many jobs. Second, enhancing digital assets. This means one, for starters, your resume is your business card. It is the first foot you're putting to the world. So having it really polished and understanding the industry within the industry you are working in, how they do it. For example, some places in the world will include pictures or profile pictures. Some won't. That was something I stumbled upon when starting to apply to jobs in the U.S. Uh, Pictures are a big no-no, but for example, again, other areas will. Similarly, colors is a topic for debate depending on the industry. So understand what is the standard for the type of roles you are applying for and fit within those. And also have it be very clear. Again, readers only really have a few seconds. So within a few seconds, you need to come across and make that message very clear in terms of what value you are bringing to the table. Then optimizing it for every job I applied, I tried to either have a template for example, I have applied in my history throughout data science roles, data analyst roles, and I had slightly different resumes for each. And then I would use now artificial intelligence to tailor it further based on the job description. So each job has usually specific wording or keywords that are very important. So I just used LLMs to migrate or use that phrasing in my own resume because yes, applicant tracking systems are a thing, and usually there is some certain scoring that goes on in the backend. So at the very least, you want to get your resume to a person's eyes, so that helps, and also makes it much more clearer your messaging if you use tailoring. And if also possible, in terms of enhancing digital assets, your LinkedIn profile, making yourself findable using keywords that your industry uses, having a decent profile picture, and your whole about section and your experience, having it well fleshed out. Again, people only have a few seconds or minutes to peruse and browse your assets, so make it very clear from the get go. And last but not least, on the digital assets, if you have time, also your portfolio website. You can either use templates, you can use GitHub pages, or you can even vibe code it. Um, Again, totally up to you how you prefer to do it, and if you have time, it's something I do recommend doing. Then, very much in the spirit of experimentation, refine as you go. Um, you will find that some job alerts are not as relevant. You can mix and match and find what works best. But also, in terms of upskilling, you will see your job descriptions and see what are the things that are being asked for. Then upskill in that and build in public. I highly recommend you build in public whatever you are upskilling on. And last but not least, it is all about the people. So I highly encourage wherever possible on LinkedIn, once you apply, try to find the team that is hiring for your role. Send out invitation connection requests. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, they will see you and say, "Hey, let's chat." Worst case scenario, you are building your network for the future. Uh, and I will say again, this was the whole cold application process. But the single best route is really going through your network. So do leverage it, build community, rely on others, and also if you even if you are not in the cold application process, it is a daunting process. So rely on your friends, rely on your network, your colleagues, or even myself if I can ever be of assistant. It is a complicated process, so take care of yourself in that regard and rely on your network and your community. And in closing, at this point, we talked about many items. We talked about what's your personal North Star. We talked about nonlinear career paths and how that is actually an asset. I encourage you to start thinking like a product analyst, even if this is not a route you're going to pursue. It is still very useful, and you can still integrate aspects of product analytics into your experimentation work. If you are in the job search process, I hope some of these tips are useful and you can chart your own career path. Again, non-linear career path, but also help you throughout the process and rely on your people, myself included. And feel free to reach out to any of those channels you see in the slide. And thank you very much.
My name is Romo Santiago, founder of Experimentation. Our new book, Prove It or Lose It, the mostly no-nonsense guide to surviving experimentation program drama is out now. Find it at experimentation.com and all major bookstores today.